Hi Jo, thanks for joining us.
Hiya.
Thank you for that. Okay, so if we're here today just to talk about your unlimited commissionings. I know you're doing lots of these things, so thank you for your time. And we're going to specifically relate it to dance, if that's okay, because I know you work across all the art forms within Unlimited. So if we just maybe start, if you could start by just describing a bit of audio description around where you are and what you look like.
Absolutely. So my name's Jo Verrent. I'm Senior Producer at Unlimited. I'm a 50-plus white woman with grey hair, which is slightly dyed pink at the moment in a COVID lockdown crisis. And I'm in my bedroom at home, in my home office in Bradford in West Yorkshire.
And I'm Louise. I'm Director of Engagement at People Dancing. I am also a white woman, mid-40s. I'm in a very brightly lit room. I'm having problems with sunshine this morning. Sunglasses on my head, and I've got brown hair that's going grey, also in a post-COVID lockdown situation. Okay, brilliantly. So first of all, I suppose, how are you and the team, and how's lockdown been for you guys?
We were quite used to remote working because we're a team that half was based in one organisation, half based in another at Shape and Arts Admin. I work all over the place anyway, so we were very lucky that we had the tools in place to make that happen, and we're very lucky to have finance in place so that we haven't been hit by some of the issues that a lot of other people have. However, the artists that we support have really been hit, particularly those who were due to premiere and tour work across all the art forms this year. That's been really problematic for them. So we've been supporting where we can, moving money around, generally keeping going and trying to get as much money out to artists as we can. Yeah. Really thinking about people's livelihoods.
It's a really difficult time, and I think certainly for us as an organisation as well, we've really refocused everything around supporting artists and employing and engaging artists as much as we can, because I know there's lots of organisations that are struggling, but I think absolutely it's about supporting them, isn't it? In terms of lockdown, including myself, I was speaking to a lot of artists that it was very quick that the world suddenly became slightly more accessible and suddenly did everything online. And so for me, from a personal level, I know people that I've spoken to, actually our world's become less isolating and more inclusive than ever before. I suppose the sort of do you worry that that's going to go? I mean, I know we're approaching, as we talk, potentially a second lockdown, but whenever this does go, are you worried that the world will go back to as it was?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I too have really benefited from some of the increased access. I've certainly been able to go to meetings that I wouldn't have been able to have gone to, and the frequency of meetings I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd have to be physically travelling around, somebody with a fatigue-related condition, and also online access, the ability to do stuff from bed. All of that I've really improved. I'm not going to let it go back, certainly in the work that I do. This works better for me on lots of ways. Not entirely. There are some things I really miss seeing work. I really miss having a cup of tea and an actual chat with somebody. But there's lots about this that really has benefited me. And so, yeah, I'm just going to go, we could do it then. We will keep doing it. And if somebody wants to be in the room at that table, then they'll have to make that accommodation. We've shown now it can work. So there shouldn't be a reason to go back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about putting that pressure on, isn't it? To sort of pull people out really and say, well, hang on a minute, during COVID, this is how accessible you became. Why have you suddenly taken that option away again? So, yeah. But already I'm seeing lots of people who are advertising for roles now saying that it's a remote role is a possibility, things like that. So fingers crossed that will continue, I suppose, but absolutely we're the kind of people that need to be calling people out to make sure that does happen.
Yeah.
What's been your biggest surprise then, I suppose, during lockdown and during this whole thing in terms of access and things like that?
I think I've got two. I think that there was a personal surprise for me when I got my shielding letter through, just how disassociated I feel connected to the word vulnerable. And that was quite a big surprise. I know it's a medical term and I know they had to come up with something, but the absolute gut rejection of that word from my body was a big surprise for me. And just reminded me of how important language is and how important the ways in which these terms impact on people. So that was one thing that was a very personal thing. I think the thing that I've been most surprised about, and I don't know why I'm surprised, is just the ingenuity and ability of artists to shift their conception of something from one form to another. And a lot of artists that we'd commissioned, pretty much all of them have come up with a digital alternative. There's only a couple of things that we haven't been able to make that switch on. And I think, artists are ingenious. Of course they are. So why was I in any way surprised by that?
And they're a resilient bunch as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
They've had to be throughout the years. So I think, but I would concur with that. I think, just the positivity rather than the kind of doom and gloom has been really amazing and fabulous to see. Okay, so just before we move on to your commissions itself, I noticed that you made an announcement, obviously having been up and running since 2013, Unlimited is now becoming independent. What does that mean? Do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Unlimited began as part of the Cultural Olympiad. So it began in about 2008, and then until 2012, the big cultural Olympic moment, it was run by LOCOG. And then it was always supposed to end then. Arts Council England and some of the other funders decided to keep it going, put it out to tender, and Shape Arts Admin and myself won that tender, and we've been delivering it from 2013 up until now, and we'll keep doing so up until 2022. So the moment of pure independence is from April 2022. However, what we're doing now, between now and then, is getting ready. So we've got a call out for board members. We'll have a board to steer that new organisation from December this year. We'll be making the plans and the development, and maybe even getting some of that staffing in place, certainly the models for it, if not the actual people in place, from very, very early 2021. So all of that transition work is going on, and it's not because we don't want to be a project. We've outgrown our parents. We're a teenager that needs to move out and take all of our stuff with us. So that's what we're doing. It's a very sad but also joyous moment, being on that cusp of growing up.
Yeah, and it's recognition really of the development that's happened, I think. But the premise of the supporting disabled artists is absolutely fundamentally the same.
Absolutely, yeah. And it sadly still needs to happen. We had hoped that we would be further along, and I think we were starting to get somewhere. I think COVID has really thrown into sharp relief, particularly with the mass redundancies in the sector and the lack of support for disabled staff within those redundancy processes, the fact that actually we're not as far on as we might like to think. We might have got some bits right in some pockets of the sector, but certainly systemically, that discrimination against disabled people is still rife within the cultural sector.
Yeah, and certainly all the stuff about we do not resuscitate and going back to your previous point about the terminology and vulnerability, and it's been very difficult on certainly personal level for a lot of disabled people around COVID. But okay. So you've announcing commissioning rounds. They're now open from 4th of October. Is that correct?
1st of October. So it's all the information is up online now, but the actual application portal opens on the 1st of October through to the 27th of October. So that's the bit where you can actually make an application.
Okay. So let's imagine, because there will be people that know Unlimited and that will know you, but there'll be lots of our members and that won't know about Unlimited. It won't even be on their radar. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about who can apply, what it is, how they apply? I know loads of information on the website, but fill us in a little bit.
So this is an opportunity for people to apply to Unlimited for funding for arts projects across 3 different strands. So we've got a main awards strand, a research and development strand, and emerging artist strand. So you can apply for the main awards strand if you live in England or in Wales. You can't apply if you're based in Scotland, and you can't apply to any of them, any of those strands, if you live outside of the UK. Sadly, at the moment, that includes Northern Ireland. We don't have funding to include Northern Ireland in the mix. But the main awards are open to people based in England and based in Wales, any art form, and you can apply for a project that you've thought of entirely yourself, or you can apply for a partner award, and I'll come on to those in a little bit because they're a little bit more complicated to understand. R&D, you can apply if you're based in England, Scotland or Wales, and emerging artists, you can apply if you're based in England, Scotland and Wales. So a main award is to make a piece of work and to share it. So that would be to tour it or to share it with audiences in some form. That can include a bit of research and development, but you have to know exactly what it is you're doing. So you have to know, I want to create this. There might be this bit of research just to test something out, but I want to create this, and this is how I'm going to get that to an audience. So the main commissions are the ones with most money attached, but you need to be able to do that whole arc. Research and development is just what it says on the tin. It's a chance to try out an idea. You can have tried something out before and want to retry it out. That's fine. So you can have done an R&D and then applied to do another R&D. That's fine. But it's got to be, it's not for touring a piece of work, and it's not for making a piece of work. It genuinely is trying out an idea and ending up with something that you then might want to apply to another funder to actually make and get to an audience. And emerging artists, we don't define emerging by age. We define it in relation to experience. So we say you're an emerging artist if you've not had funding in your own right substantially before. So you might have been in a group show, but not had a solo exhibition. The emerging artist is often the one where people find it hard to know, are they an emerging artist? Are they established? And that's a really tricky thing. Wherever you draw that line, that's a tricky thing. So we do it based on what kind of funding you've had. And again, you can apply for emerging English, Welsh, Scottish, not Irish, sorry. In each of those, there are partner awards. So you don't have to apply for a partner award. If you're applying just once, you don't have to apply for a partner award. If you want to make 2 applications, then your second application does have to link to a partner award. Now, a partner award is simply where we've partnered up with somebody in the cultural sector and they've put some money on the table, we've matched that, and there's an award specifically in their name. They have additional criteria attached to them. And so you have to meet our criteria and then their criteria as well in order to tick that box and say, I'd like it to be considered under that award. Just because you tick that box doesn't mean we don't consider it generally. So if that award partner doesn't particularly, fund your project, that's fine. It still goes into the general pot. I better tell you what our criteria are. So ours are, the work must be disability led. So we know there's a lot of inclusive work out there that may be led by non-disabled people. We think that's brilliant, but it's not what we fund. We fund work which is disability led, which means the creative control around a piece of work is led by disabled people. We fund work that has some sense of stretch in it. So if it's just you doing what you would usually do, then we'd suggest we're probably not the right funder. We want there to be some stretch. That might be a stretch in art form. It might be a stretch in audience. It might be a stretch in size or scale. There must be something about it that's slightly risky or different to you as an artist. They're the main kind of things that we look for. And then other partners for partner awards have their own. So Bagri Foundation is funding a couple of R&D awards, and they're only for artists who identify as artists from the Asian diaspora. And so it just means that if you happen to fit that criteria, you might as well tick that box, because there's some money there that's ring fenced. Coventry 2021 is a partner on some Emerging Artists Awards. And that means that if you live in Coventry, or it's not Wakefield, Coventry or Warwickshire, yeah, if you live there, again, in the Emerging Artists Awards, they're ring fenced for those, and they're also ring fenced thematically to link with 2021 and their themes. So the partner awards sound a bit complicated, but actually it's about what do you want to apply for? Does it fit one of these categories? And we have awards that link to rural touring. We have awards that link to family friendly work, polka theatre, for example, or South Bank Centre. So we've got lots of partners. What it means is that we have more money to play with, and also that if you do get one of those awards, the embedding of artists within the cultural sector becomes easier simply because there's a partner on board. I think you might have your mic muted.
Have I? Can you hear me now?
You're back.
I think I was just not speaking loud. Absolutely, and in terms of sort of sustainability and longevity, that partnership work is certainly, you know, it's obviously in terms of your commissioning rounds, it's not essential, but you know, in terms of strategies, it's always better to try and embed the artist within the organisation, isn't it?
And we also find that some people like a tighter brief.
Yeah.
Some people find apply for whatever you like is just too general. It doesn't help them think and conceptualise what they might want to do. Whereas actually, if there is more criteria, their brains work better that way. And we wanted to make sure there were options for both.
Yeah, and that was something I was just going to say, is as an organisation, in terms of an application process, you will never meet a more accessible organisation in terms of how you can apply and the needs and supports if you are disabled, and how that can be met.
Yeah, we would hope so. I think there's always things that we're learning. I think the first thing we did was to split it into 2 stages. So there's an expression of interest, which is like a really simple tell us your idea. You don't have to supply a budget, you don't have to supply much detail. And then we shortlist from those ideas. We're just interested in your idea. We're not interested in your spelling. We're not interested in your grammar. You can do it by video. You can, you know, any way you can tell us your idea that works for you, we're happy to receive. And we just then shortlist those ideas. When it comes to doing a full application, only the people on that shortlist have to do that application. And everyone on that shortlist gets an hour's worth of supports from someone on our team, because we want the final applications to be the strongest they can be. And if we can help you with your budget, or we can explain a criteria, that seems to us to be the best way. We can't offer it to everybody, it's just too many people, but we can for those on that shortlist where they've got to do more work and complete a fuller form. The other thing is access support. If anything in the process puts a barrier up for you, we really want to pay for that barrier to be removed. So a lot of people use that if they don't like the online system and they want to get someone to transcribe for them, or even if people have difficulty in formulating an idea and actually getting everything into the word count, then we're quite used to paying for that kind of support too.
So, you know, as I say, if someone's got something specific they don't see themselves within, they can get in touch with us.
Yeah.
When we talk more specifically dance, would you say that it's fair to say that, I suppose, historically in the commissionings, the dance is probably the most underrepresented genre? Or
it's not the most underrepresented genre. That award would go to literature, sadly, which we're really trying to address. But we certainly haven't done as much in dance as we anticipated doing. And some of that is because the dance sector is actually quite open and supportive of disabled dancers anyway, in some pockets. So people haven't felt the need to come to us, and that's fine. You know, we don't think everybody should. It's also quite a lot of inclusive companies who don't fit our disability-led criteria. But yeah, so dance, we're really interested in funding more of.
And in terms of dance, again, is there anything specific that you would be looking for in a project, or is it just about what you said, where it has to be sort of just stretching the individual or the company?
I think stretching the individual and the company is part of it. Partners are really interesting, particularly for main commissions, and we're talking about creating a piece of work that can get to an audience. The more not necessarily connected someone is, but the clearer that strategy of how you might connect to an audience. So it's not only about creating the work, it is about creating the work for an audience. Yeah. So it's about thinking of that whole thing. I think quite often people come in just with the creative idea rather than who it's for. And when you say, well, who is it for? They say everyone. It's like, trust me, no piece of work is for everyone. It really, really isn't. And if you say everyone, then actually you haven't thought about who your audience is.
Yeah, and that's something as well I was just going to touch on. And you know, the ideas don't have to be, although they're disability led, they don't have to be about disability disorder. Do they?
No, we will say that it's funding artists to make the work they want to make. It's not for us to dictate the subject matter. It's not for us to dictate the politics or not within a piece. We're simply here to remove the barriers to artists being funded.
Brilliant. Thank you. Let's move on now, because I know that you're working with Tramway and Siobhan Davis Dance on a project. Can you just talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so as well as the open commissioning round, and that's where the bulk of our money go, but we do keep a little bit back for what we call strategic commissions. And strategic commissions are where the timescales for the partners don't fit that long open process. So Siobhan Davis Company, we've been talking with them for about 2 years about potentially co-funding a dance work. And it's now going to be co-funded by Tramway, as you said, but also by Bluecoat and Baltic. And it's to create a piece of dance specifically for gallery context. And it tours to those galleries and then potentially also a wider network of galleries too. So we did an open call out, we shortlisted a group, and then everybody on that shortlist actually got paid a small amount to create their full applications and bring them and have an interview, which is a model we're really interested to see if we could do in the future. We can't do it for this round, but it's one of a number of things that we're looking at as an independent organisation. What would that model, what would that change mean? And yeah, so we awarded that last week. The company have said yes, which is great, and we'll be announcing that this week, so I'll tell you, but it's a secret now, which feels great saying it, but hopefully by the time this comes out it won't be. So we've awarded it to a group called the Deptford Freestylers, that are a group of learning disabled and other artists and people who happen to be based in Deptford who freestyle. Are usually on a weekly or kind of semi-regular basis, and they'll be taking some of their models and some of their film work into the gallery settings and running a process and a performance process that also connects to local audiences of learning disabled and other disabled people within those locations, so that everybody can get involved in the joy of dancing.
Brilliant. Oh, well, I'll take it right on about the dance. That's fabulous. That sounds a really exciting project. It's interesting that you talk about models, because something I've always been banging on about for ages is that, traditionally the touring model, the rehearsal model, it just doesn't work for so many disabled artists. And I just wondered if you felt like that had changed any in the last sort of 3 years-ish, whether you feel like the relationship with organisations that perhaps are non-disabled led, whether there's any more open now to that different type of model of working, and whether COVID's actually helped with that, I suppose.
I think it has, to an extent, in that we all know the touring model is broken, and we all know that the Edinburgh model is pretty broken kind of too, but we don't have many alternatives. So we've done a little bit of experimentation. We funded one piece in partnership with Marlborough Productions that was a cabaret kind of format. So if somebody was ill, somebody else could take their place. So it didn't have a set bill. And that was an attempt to look at what if you can't commit to a whole tour. We've had conversations around contracts, and if somebody isn't well enough to fulfill a contract, who bears the financial penalty for that? And that's been some really interesting kind of conversations, but no resolution, because actually it does depend on the financial situation of each venue, and how much they're kind of demanding that. But we're certainly looking at that being a point of discussion rather than a fait accompli. Within the Deptford Freestylers, they came up with a really innovative half-filmed, half-live model that could flex according to COVID requirements, which I thought was really interesting, and also takes the pressure away, particularly from people who may tire over the whole of a performance, to be on stage performing the whole time. So the involvement of filmed work within that gives a different balance. I think we've started to see quite a lot of that come up, where people are fusing those art forms. And I just think that we've been doing it the wrong way round. We've been saying, here is a touring model, fit this, rather than how do you share this work with an audience best? And then can we fund the work in a way that enables that to happen? If you know you will be touring 2 days a week, rather than cramming it all into 7, then let's find a way to make that happen, and make that happen well.
Absolutely. I think that some of that is about permissions, the individual giving themselves permission that that's actually okay, and that actually somebody would be willing to listen to the concept around what a different model might look like. And some of that is just, I think, getting rid of these age-old systems that have been in place that just need shaking up, and some of them putting in the bin and some of them not putting in the bin. So I think I think it goes back to this thing, doesn't it, where people are often very scared of doing something a bit different or new, and actually the mindset needs to change to actually how exciting and creative it would be to just look at different ways and how you fuse different things. And like you said before, it's not about getting rid of the old system necessarily, but it's about how can it fuse, and
and even down to what constitutes a performance. So we often talk about events rather than performances, because performances already starts to dictate this may be a 45-minute to 1 hour 20 slot, which would usually happen in the evening or in a matinee type thing, rather than actually there's a lot of durational events now, which are no less artistic, or it doesn't make it less interesting, actually makes it more interesting when we start to subvert form. So we funded parties, we funded workshops, we funded, I think we did one durational event that was 24 hours long. We funded, that range, I think, is really, really important. And the whole thing of who is the expert here, and the rise of participatory work being seen as vital and valid, rather than the poor cousin of performance work. I think that's really started to shift too. I'm minded of Vikel Messenger's cloud spotting installation, which was incredibly high quality, but it was absolutely about co-curating with a group of people, who experience, fatigue as one of the barriers to their daily living. I'm really, I think we are as interested in all of that style of work as we are the standard performing model.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously as a community dance organisation, we are in the heart of the participatory arts. And I think you're absolutely right. I think there's starting to be I'm hoping there's a change in perception that, that it somehow has a lesser qualitative kind of aspect to it than something that's on a stage. And we all know that it absolutely is equal to.
And I think that's the same for work aimed at a children's audience, or work aimed at rural touring. We've had these things in our boxes in a hierarchy, and I think that hierarchy is ridiculous and doesn't actually exist. There's some stunning work going to rural audiences. There is some stunning work that's aimed at children and young people. It's not about either or, it's about and.
Yeah, 100% shift happening, albeit maybe slow, but I think it's going to be key in the survival of the arts really in the next few years.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, let's talk about the Wales. We were very fortunate in 2014 to be commissioned by Unlimited to do 11 Million Reasons to Dance with photographer Sean Goldthorpe, and we're very fortunate we've still got legacy projects happening. So we have a 2-year project in Wales at the moment that's having to be digitalised, but we're still doing that. And I know from talking to you that you're doing quite a lot of work in Wales as well. So do you want to just talk about, you've got some, I'm assuming they may be digitalised as well now, but you've got some open...
We did do a whole series of events in Wales in various different places, and then shifting to digital when we couldn't do them in real places. Sorry, Aberystwyth. What we're doing now is, so we will always have Connect events, and that's an opportunity for artists and organisations to come together and connect, and that's across all the areas that we work in. But we had a particular concentration of them in Wales over the last kind of 12 months, which ended this August. And that was because we got some additional lottery funding to really try and make those connections. There's been a little bit of a disconnect, partly due to some staffing issues in some of the infrastructure within Wales, and we didn't, and Arts Council Wales didn't want to let those conversations drop. But I think now that Ruth Fabi, who used to be Ruth Gould of Dada Fest, she's now in place with Disability Arts Cymru, and we can gratefully, for both her sake and our sake, hand over that convening role in Wales back to Disability Arts Cymru, who should really take that responsibility on. Our responsibility is to commission artists rather than to solely host those conversations. So we'll still work in partnership with them. But we did a massive range of events and looked at some really interesting topics, such as Welsh language work and where the barriers were for disabled people learning Welsh and taking on that national language. We looked at the pipe chain for people getting into the industry. We looked at popular versus work that an artist might want to do but might not land with an audience. That was a really interesting conversation. So yeah, lots and lots of interesting conversations, lots of information on the website.
Like a pro. Okay, I've got just a few questions, if that's okay, from people. That's all right. Charlotte, I found lockdown, we've kind of covered this, but I found lockdown empowering, being working online predominantly. How can I make sure that I connect with an organisation and stay accessible? I think
so there's loads of brilliant guidance out there on making online stuff accessible. I think we've tended to concentrate on the captions or the BSL interpretation rather than actually making sure people are comfortable. So very, very simple things like, do you know what, you can turn your camera off? Do you know what, there's a setting where you can hide the picture of yourself? You don't have to be here all the time. Do get into bed, put your pajamas on, have a cup of tea, plenty of breaks. I think there's a lot more we can do around that softer side of online access. Zooming all day, every day is, is exhausting. And sometimes we get these ideas, oh, let's run an event from, 10 till 5. And it's like, let's do an hour. You don't have to go to everything and you don't have to be at everything for the whole time. But yeah, I think that softer side of access we could really look at better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I just to add to that, I suppose, just for dance artists or practitioners that have got people coming in, sometimes it's not always the case, but you can always just touch base with individuals about what specific access needs they've got to engage, whether that be about breaks or whether that be about BSL or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a call out about an event, give an email where people ask the question, what can we do to make this more accessible for you? And give a contact and then reply.
Yes, the prize is always good. From Anonymous, have you got any key points for dancers as to what Unlimited is looking for when it comes to dance applications? And does it matter that you've applied again? If you've applied?
Doesn't matter at all if you've applied before. There's no criteria relating to whether you've received an award or not before, so don't worry about that. The thing I would say to anybody applying is keep your idea deliverable and understandable. Quite often people write in arts jargon, particularly jargon that's associated to a particular art form. Our selection panels are made up of people from a really wide range of different art forms, backgrounds. They're disability-led, often they involve artists, but they may not be artists in your discipline. So I would say in that ideas, when you submit an idea, make sure it's really clear. Do it in advance, show it to some mates, get other people to tell you what they think you're applying for, because you'll be really surprised how often we write down words that we think describe one thing, but when they're read by somebody else, they actually don't, or they mean something very different. So I would do it in advance, get other people to read it, and make sure it's clear and says what you want to do.
But content-wise,
stretch. Yeah, I want to tour a piece of dance about potatoes with a cast of 3. I did something similar based on other root vegetables. Very unlikely to get, not that we're against vegetables, but I've done this before, I want to do it again. It's very unlikely to get through. I've got a really interesting idea I've not tried before that stretches me, the audience, the art form, whatever, in some way. That's got a better chance.
Okay, Kate, complete beginner in terms of applying and things like that, but have you got any tips for beginners who are delivering and getting to starting out creating for their own work? So it might not be about the commissions, but just any tips generally about people sort of starting out to create their own work.
Well, it means ignore all the other advice apart from on the emerging artists one. That's the best place to start, because then it's slightly less overwhelming. Again, I think talk to other people, use the networks such as People Dancing or what other networks you're in to talk through your ideas. There are people there who can help you shape an idea into something that can be delivered. So don't be afraid to reach out and find those partnerships, those networks. It might just be finding one other person, and then you share your idea with them, they share their idea with you, and you have a conversation about it. But I always say, don't just make it yourself in a bedroom, writing something down, sending it off with your fingers crossed. It's much, much better if you've got a chance to share it in advance with somebody else and get their take on it.
It can be quite soul destroying as well, doing that, the whole thing really solo as well, can't it? Especially
and I would look at any application as part of a journey. It's part of a network. So anybody who applies to Unlimited, your application is read by everybody on that selection panel, and that includes Arts Council or British Council, South Bank Centres on a couple of the panels. So you're getting your name seen by a wide range of people. So you've started, it's like networking without having to go anywhere. Just by applying, you are starting that process of becoming slightly more known. So even if you don't get through, you've still made some connections.
Yeah, and learned something, no doubt.
Yeah.
Anna, I am neurodiverse and have ADHD, and even structuring, I think you've answered this before actually, but even structuring an application or even thinking about how you put it down is really tricky. Have you got any advice?
Yep, find somebody you can work with, ask us, and then we can pay that person to spend a couple of days with you helping you do that. They can't come up with the idea for you, but there are people who can draw the idea out, and then you can look at that and go, yes, that's what I mean, that's what I want to apply for. And there are people who are really skilled at that. We can't suggest people. Imagine if we gave you somebody who was really crap. then you could come back and slag us off for it. So we can't, it biases us as funders if we do that. But again, use the networks that exist to find the right people who can help you do that, and start that work now. This is why we get all the information out there early, before the portal opens. And we say to people, start building these relationships, start thinking about, don't leave it all till the last minute.
Okay. And then the last question was around digital stuff. Obviously, lots of this one's from me actually. Obviously, we've all created stuff. Lots of artists put stuff digitally. I think there might be a perception that everyone's got to suddenly put digital stuff in there, but they don't, do they? It doesn't have to be digital.
No, this funding will be for work being primarily created in 2021, 2022. Fingers crossed, will not be in the situation that we are now. We are expecting there will be more applications using digital than we've had before. But if they're all digital, then we're in trouble, because we do hope at some point that we will actually have a live arts sector once again. And also, if something else does happen in the same way that happened this time, we would work with you to pivot, as I believe the technical term is, to pivot your project and change it. So don't get hung up on that now. You know, when we contract people, everybody who was contracted by us got their full money, regardless of what they could create during a pandemic. So you don't get penalised for having ambitions that aren't digital in the first place.
Yeah. Thank you. So just lastly then, before we finish, I know that you are changing the world, but your main sort of strategies for the next sort of 3 to 5 years are around?
Well, I would hold on that, because right this moment we have an advisory group, and then we have a board that will be coming to them. We're considering what those things will be right at this minute. We know that at the moment we try and do too much. I know, due to the exhaustion of my team, that we try and do too much. I know the fact that often things fall off the table, that we are trying to do too much. So in setting up a new organisation, we need to be really clear about what we do and what we don't do. So we're looking at, should we be trying to work with artists at all stages of their career, or do we limit that? Do we include producers and curators within that, or do we not? We're looking at, are we about risk, or should we be about something else? So we've got some really interesting conversations coming up about that, but the decisions aren't yet made, but they will be made soon. And we will let people know once we make them. And also we're interested then in, where are the other bits of the jigsaw? You know, if we can't do something and we've had it lumped onto us, well, who is doing that? So we're really interested in, being clearer about what we do and don't do, and also who does those other things.
Absolutely. We've all got our own roles in our own corners of the world, I think. And I think for me, I feel like I still don't, that there must be so many disabled dance artists out there that I'm not engaging with. And if anybody is out there and I don't know who you are, I'd love to know who you are. I'd love to meet you. So there are organisations definitely out there to support and nurture more now than ever, I think.
Absolutely. And there's an appetite for the work that's growing, and that's, people are really interested in seeing work that isn't the same as work they've seen previously. And I think that's a real unique advantage that disabled dancers can bring to the sector. We can show stuff that's fresh. We can show stuff that comes from a different perspective. We can show stuff that works technically, conceptually, in a different way. We're good at it.
And it's important that you're good at it, and it's important that, because the historical argument about disability work's less quality and all of that, we're not at that point anymore at all.
No.
I think that's definitely something that's definitely improved and isn't really there anymore, which is fantastic. Okay, thank you. I know you have to go, and I know you're a busy woman, so appreciate your time today, Jo. And I'll just signpost people that come to me maybe to the website, and we've got lots of resources on our website, and anyone can get in touch with me, Louise at communitydance.org.uk.
And they can get in contact and ask us any questions with info@weareunlimited.org.uk.
Thank you, my lovely. Great to see you.
Okay, I shall switch off now and go to the next Zoom meeting.
Oh, God. Zoom out, all of us, aren't we? Thanks very much.
Okay, see you soon. Bye.